In this video, we're going to look at a practical use of using the surface noise tool. So here I have it's a hat that I sculpted. All right, it's Dynamesh still, and it's got about 500,000 polygons. So right now, if I look at the poly frame, it's all one poly group, and I want to actually lower the polygon count on this, UV it, and apply surface noise to it. So I'm going to walk through all those steps, and I'm going to show you exactly how I would do that. So first thing though, I would turn Dynamesh off. You don't want to accidentally swipe while you've got Dynamesh on. It'll change your poly count quite often. It'll change sometimes it'll change the look of your model a little bit. Certainly if you have holes, sometimes the Dynamesh can fill those holes by accident, and that's if you just accidentally swipe. So when I'm done sculpting with a piece, I turn Dynamesh off. In my subtool palette, I'm going to come over here and just to make sure that I'm being non-destructive, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this piece. And I'm going to make sure the visibility is turned off on the original piece right there. So I'm only dealing with the duplicate here. And I'm going to come down to my geometry tab and open up Z-Remesher. And by default, the settings will look something like this right here. The target will be at 5 and adapt will be turned on. So I'm going to make sure, since this is a symmetrical piece of geometry, that my symmetry is turned on before I run the Z-Remesher. If you don't have your symmetry on and you have a symmetrical piece of geometry, the results you'll get will be a little bit skewed. There won't be a center line. It'll be a little bit asymmetrical, if you will. So with my symmetry turned on, poly count set to 5, adaptive turned on, I'm going to go ahead and hit Z-Remesher. And this is going to take a couple of minutes or a minute or so to run through. And it's going to knock it down from almost 500,000 polygons. I don't know. Well, when the target poly count is set to 5, it's going to try and reach 5,000 polygons. It doesn't always do that. It gets close, and it's going to be a lot lower than 500,000 polygons, but I'm betting it won't hit 5,000. So let's take a look and see. I'm watching the status line right here. And there we go. All right. So let me take a look at this guy. 9,500 polygons. Let me turn my poly frame on, and you can see what we've got here. That's not bad. That's a lot lower than the almost 500,000. But you know, I think I can take it a little bit lower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn adaptive off. What adaptive will do is give me smaller polygons in areas where there is a change in direction, and slightly bigger polygons where there isn't a change in direction. I want my polygons to somewhat remain the same size all around. So I'm going to turn adaptive off. I'm going to turn on half. And that's going to try and half the poly count right here. So just with half turned on, and tell you what, just to be safe, I'm going to take this adaptive size all the way down to 0 as well. And I'll hit Z-Remesh again. And this one will go a lot faster. And you can see that it pretty much did divide it in half. And that doesn't look too bad, but I'm going to go ahead and hit Z-Remesher one more time. So what I want you to notice is I'm not undoing the last one. I'm just going ahead and Z-Remeshing it constantly. Now with half on again, it's going to try and get down to half of that. And there we go. 2,200. That's not bad. I like that a lot. I'm going to keep that. All right, so we're done with Z-Remesher. I'm going to close that up. Now, this piece of geometry, if I scroll down to the UV map right here, does not have any UVs. All right, you can tell it doesn't have any UVs because this is all grayed out right here. So let me close that up. And for me to get decent UVs out of this, what I really need to do is polygroup the inside of the hat separate from the outside of the hat. All right, and that'll give me cleaner UVs. Especially since I'm going to do the UVs here inside of ZBrush. using a plugin here called UV Master. And UV Master really just gives you quick, cheap, fast, dirty UVs. They're nothing to write home about, certainly nothing you would use in a proper production. Okay, but just to get quick UVs on here, we can use UV Master. Now, a little trick I'm going to show you is I'm going to separate the inside of the hat from the outside of the hat here. And to do that, I'm going to use the Select Lasso. The Select Lasso. So if you went into B for brush and then S for select, you would find the Select Lasso right here. Okay. To use this brush, you have to hold Control and Shift, and we'll say OK. And now here's what happens when you use the Select Lasso. I'm going to come in here a little bit, and I'm going to sort of select a row of polygons where I want to separate my polygroups. And I think I'm going to do this row right here. So let me get in here a bit. All right, and I'm going to hold Control and Shift and click on the edge here, and you'll see what happens is it hides that complete row of polygons. That complete row is hidden, and while it's hidden, I'm going to come over here to my polygroups and click on Auto Groups. So what that does now is it creates two separate polygroups, one for the inside, one for the outside. Now if I hold Control and Shift and click out here in empty space, it'll bring back that missing strip. Okay. Now I only want two polygroups. Right now I have three, so I need to combine this polygroup with this polygroup right here. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and use the Select Rectangle brush. All right. Now if I use the Select Lasso again, all I'm going to do is hide another row of polygons. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and select the Select Rectangle. Again, you have to use Control and Shift, and we'll say OK. And I'm going to hold Control and Shift and just click on the inside piece here. That will hide everything else. And if I hold Control and Shift and click on this again, it will show me those other two pieces. Now in my Polygroups palette, if I just click on Group Visible, now all of that is one polygroup. Okay, I'm going to hold Control and Shift and bring back the other piece. So there you go. Now we have our hat separated into two polygroups, and I'm going to go ahead and UV this right now. And you'll see why I wanted to put that into two polygroups here in a second, as soon as we go ahead and start UVing it. So let me just put this like this. I'm going to double click over here and open up my divider, grab my Z plugin palette, drag it over, open up UV Master. And in UV Master here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this down here because I want to show you something. With UV Master, the first thing I'm going to do is click on Work on a Clone. Work on Clone. Okay. And you'll see that if I turn my polyframe off, you'll see that it changes the material to this white material. And it cleared out my subtool palette. And you can see right here where it says CL. All right, that designates it as a clone. And if I want to get back to my original hat, it's right here. It's right here. I just need to click on that. There's my original. Now, this is where you really have to pay attention because the material still remains that white. Now, I'm going to go back to my cloned hat right here. Then we're going to UV, excuse me, we're going to do the UVs on the clone. Then we're going to copy them from the clone and paste them back onto my original hat. So let's go back to the clone. Let's go back to our UV Master palette. I'm going to make sure that polygroups is turned on as well as symmetry. We want this to respect the polygroups that we've created, and we have a symmetrical piece of geometry. So I have both of those turned on. And because this is a very simple piece, all I really need to do at this point is click Unwrap. So we'll do that, give it a second. And now to see what our UVs look like, I'm going to click on Flatten right here. And there you go. You can see now the two shells that we created, the two polygroups, are now separated and flattened, and we have quite nice UVs actually for a simple piece of geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and unflatten that. Now remember, we have to copy the UVs from our clone and paste them onto our original. So I'm going to copy the UVs. I'm going to go back here, and now this is where you have to pay attention. I'm going to go back to my original and click on that. Now look at our subtool palette. I'm going to click on this. All right, now we're back to the original model. And now I'm going to paste the UVs back on here. Now that I've pasted those UVs back, I can go ahead and change my material. And if it doesn't change back, just go ahead and, oops, just, there we go. Sorry, one sec here. Hold on. If you Control N, if that happens to you, just hit Control N. Something weird happened there. I'm going to change my material to this basic material right here. And if it doesn't change, just go ahead and click on MRGB and fill object, and that'll fill that object with that material. Now, let's come down here to our UV palette. Let's close this up, and let's open up our UV palette. And now you can see that these are not grayed out. In fact, if I go ahead and click Morph UV, you'll see, there we go, there's our two UV pieces right there. I'll turn our poly frame on. We'll morph that back. There we go. All right, so we can close that up. We've got UVs on this piece. I'm going to turn off my poly frame right here. And let me just see. Let me just change that back to the basic material. I'm going to fill that. There we go. I like that a little bit better. All right. Now, let's go back over to our geometry tab. We need to give this some density. Right now it's only, and let me close this up. All right, right now we only have 2100, 2200 polygons. So I'm going to go ahead and divide this once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and one more time. Gets us up to just over 2 million polygons on this guy, which should be more than enough for what we want to do. I'm going to move this guy over. Okay, just a little bit. And we're going to go back to our surface tab here. So let me come down to surface. I'm going to click on noise. We get our window again, so I can move this guy around. I'm going to move him over. Okay. And we'll make him a little bit bigger here. All right. And what I'm going to do now is something that I didn't show you last time. For one thing, I showed you all the controls here. We showed you the noise plug. There's one other thing we can do right here, and it's right down here where it says alpha on and off. If you have a tileable alpha, okay, a tileable alpha, one that you can stack end-to-end seamlessly, you can apply it to the mesh here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on alpha on off, and that's going to open a Finder window. And this will bring me to my folder with my alphas in there. And I have a depth grab knit.jpg. All right, and it's just a knit weave JPEG. I found this on the internet for free. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Okay, now if you don't see your alpha show up, go ahead and try that again. Now let me try the EXR here. I've got two different ones. Oh, there we go. All right, the EXR showed up a little bit better than the JPEG. So you can see now, if the image is showing up there, that means that your alpha is applied. And what we need to do now is come over here and start playing with some of these settings. So first thing, I want to make sure I get rid of the basic noise. We don't want any of that speckled sort of noise on here. I'm going to bring that down to 0. And then right here on strength, this is where I'm going to start playing with this. And you can see there's our alpha there. Now one thing that you can do is play right here with this button. If you go ahead and click on that, you'll see that it'll give you a different result. Okay. So again, off or on is not sure. Now let's play with the scale, the alpha scale. Let's bring this down. Okay. Now let me try this button again here and try this. Let me see. All right. There. Oh, that's not too bad. All right. Let's see. Oh, there we go. That's what I was looking for. All right, let's bring this down. So sometimes it works better with this button on, sometimes with it off. And if you hold down the control button as you hover over it, usually it'll give you a help document, but it doesn't seem to want to do it for that one. But you can see what it does here. It increases the strength. Okay, so I want something like this. Now, right now, I have it set to 3D. All right, actually, let me bring the scale down a little bit more. Sorry, not the noise scale, the alpha scale. There we go. All right, now right now I have it on 3D, and if I turn this around, you're going to see that we got some stretching happening. All right, lots of stretching. So to fix that, because our hat does have UVs, all we need to do is turn on UV right here. And there you go. And you can see that that follows the UVs quite nicely. We're not getting any stretching. I do have to adjust the alpha scale. All right, something like that maybe. All right. So now if I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. That will transfer that over to our geometry here. Now remember, it's still not part of our geometry until we come in here and apply to mesh. So let's go ahead and do that. And it takes a second. There we go. And there we go. So now our alpha has been applied to our hat. Okay. And we have a fairly interesting piece of geometry that was fairly easy to make. All right. So there's plenty of information on the internet about this Surface plugin. There's a ton of stuff you can do with it. But if you have any questions about it, please let me know. I'd be glad to answer them if I can.